My name is Oliver Sharbrodt. I'm Professor of Islamic Studies at the University of Birmingham. Sayyid Muhammad Baqir Sadr was a man who possessed an immense intellectual energy. He was, without doubt, one of the most important Islamic thinkers that came from the Hausa and Najaf in the 20th century. And he recognized two major challenges in his time, in the 1950s and 1960s, that threatened the position of religion in the Muslim world more generally, the position of Islam in the Muslim world more generally, and the position of the Hausa and the Marja'iyya in Iraq more specifically. And the two challenges were, on the one hand, the rise of the modern state that adopted a secular attitude, a secular ethos, that tried to control religion, that tried to minimize the influence, the importance of Islam in politics, in law, in society. The second challenge was more intellectual, and Sayyid Muhammad Baqir Sadr was very, very much aware that the second challenge was much more profound and much more threatening, and that was the challenge posed by communism and its philosophical foundation in Marxist philosophy. In the 1950s, in the 1960s, if you were a young person, educated in Iraq, in the Arab world, in Asia and Africa, and you had a sense for social justice, you opposed imperialism, Western hegemony, you opposed colonialism, the natural choice would have been to embrace communism. Communist parties were active across the global south. There was a very active communist party in Iraq. And of course, the idea of communism to establish a more just society, a fairer society, this theme of social justice very much resonated with many Shiis, because that is a core theme, a core element of Shia thought. So we had in the 1950s, 60s, young Iraqi Shiis embracing communism, becoming active in the Communist Party. And of course, as part of its philosophical grounding, there is a strong element of atheism, the rejection of religion. I mean, Karl Marx famously said that religion is the opium of the people. And we think of opium today as a drug. When he was writing in the 19th century, opium was used as a painkiller. So he was like paracetamol. So he was saying that religion is there to soothe the suffering that comes from injustice, to allow people forget the oppression they experience. And of course, these ideas for a community that was oppressed, that experienced persecution, were appealing. And Baqir Sadr recognized this and felt it needs for Shiism to develop a response to communism and to Marxism and its atheist attitudes. And he worked in three different areas. One, and in this respect he wasn't not alone, I mean there were many other figures at the time doing something similar, was to improve the social outreach of the Marja'iyya and the Hausa and Najaf, to provide alternative institutions of education, to ensure that the Hausa and the Marja'iyya retain their cultural influence, are relevant to society, again, through being involved in charitable activities, educational activities, running libraries, community centers, to reach out to the wider community. The second challenge was to find an intellectual response. And I think for Baqir Sadr, that was the most important element and the area where he made most contributions. He recognized that it needs an intellectual response to a secular state, to the appeal of communism, and began to formulate responses. Falsafatuna is an important work where he sort of offers an alternative to Marxist philosophy, rejecting historical materialism, the idea that history is determined by opposing forces struggling with one another. He tried to revive the heritage of Shi'i philosophy, ideas such as al-haraka al-jawhariyya, a substantial movement, so the idea that we as individuals, society as a whole, possesses potentialities, and the idea of Islam, of religion, is to develop these potentialities. In Iqtisaduna, he wanted to he describes the contours, the principles of a possible Islamic economic system to separate it from communism and capitalism. And we need to be aware that when he was writing, when Baqir Sadr was writing these works, he was in his early 20s, in his mid-20s. When most of us are undergraduate students, and he was engaging with communism, Marxism, Islamic thought at this time, and began to formulate responses that have proven to be extremely influential. The third area was obviously political activism, and he, as we all know, became very important in the formation of his Da'wah. And again, I think we sometimes fail to recognize how revolutionary this step was, because for the Marja'iyya and Najaf to get involved in politics, that was not the natural orientation. The Marja'iyya was based in an environment that was very hostile to its activities, an oppressive state that tried to suppress and curtail its activities. So to form a political party, again, to reach out to socially, politically conscious young Shi'is in Iraq was a very bold and very revolutionary step. And I suppose, the challenge of communism, of Marxist philosophy, which was, very, very important for Baqir Sadr and the context in which he operated in the 1950s and 60s. Of course, these challenges are not there, but I think, what was central to his approach was that Shi'i Islam and its leaders in the Marja'iyya, its education institutions in the Hawza, they always need to be relevant to society, to the community. They need to forge links with the community, take their concerns seriously, and engage with the ideas that are shared, that are circulated within society, and formulate an Islamic response to these ideas. I think that is the legacy we can take from him in the year 2021, because that approach, this attitude, is crucial if Shi'i Islam, its religious institutions, its philosophy is to remain relevant in the modern world.